A massive project is underway in Nicaragua, a canal connecting the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. This $50 billion endeavor, spearheaded by Chinese businessman Wang Jing and his HK&D group, aims to rival the Panama Canal. Spanning 278 kilometers, the canal promises a new route for global trade. Nicaragua hopes the canal will bring economic growth and jobs. The project's scale has drawn global attention, with the potential to reshape shipping routes. However, challenges have emerged, including funding gaps and resistance from local communities. The canal's construction could transform Nicaragua's landscape and economy, but its environmental impact and potential threats to the country's sovereignty are debated. The Nicaraguan government believes the canal will attract much-needed investment. Critics, however, argue that the project lacks transparency. They fear it could lead to environmental damage and social unrest. Protests have erupted from communities concerned about losing their land and livelihoods. The canal's construction has already begun, clearing vast swaths of land. This has heightened anxieties about deforestation and its impact on local ecosystems. The project's environmental assessment remains shrouded in secrecy, fueling further skepticism. The Nicaragua Canal project has been plagued by funding problems. Despite securing the contract 5 years ago, Wang Jing's HK&D group has struggled to raise the necessary capital. This has cast a long shadow over the project's feasibility, raising questions about its long-term viability. Analysts point to the lack of transparency in the project's financing as a major red flag. The absence of credible financial backing has fueled doubts about HK&D's ability to deliver on its promises. A global economic slowdown and China's own economic challenges have exacerbated the situation. Funding shortfalls have caused significant delays, stalling construction. The initial completion date of 2020 has been indefinitely postponed. This has further eroded confidence in the project's future. The financial uncertainty raises concerns about the canal's long-term viability and the potential risks for investors. The lack of transparency in the project's financial dealings has made it difficult to assess its true economic viability. This has led to speculation and fueled rumors, further undermining confidence in the project. The Nicaragua Canal project has significant geopolitical implications. It signals China's growing influence in a region traditionally considered the United States' backyard. This has raised alarms among U.S. policymakers about China's expanding economic and military footprint in Central America. The canal's location in Nicaragua, a country cultivating closer ties with China, has heightened these concerns. The U.S. government has expressed apprehension about the project's potential to undermine its interests in the region. The Nicaragua Canal project underscores the shifting geopolitical landscape and the intensifying rivalry between China and the United States for influence in Latin America. The canal could reshape global trade routes and supply chains. It has the potential to shift the balance of power in the region, creating new economic opportunities for China and its allies. The project's geopolitical significance has made it a focal point of U.S.-China relations, a source of tension between the two superpowers. The canal could give China control over a critical shipping lane, potentially impacting global trade flows. This has raised concerns about China's growing economic and strategic leverage over other countries. The Nicaragua Canal project has triggered protests from local farmers and peasants facing the loss of their land and livelihoods. These communities are worried about the project's environmental impact and the lack of transparency in the decision-making process. The protests highlight the social and environmental risks associated with large-scale infrastructure projects. The U.S. government has also voiced concerns, particularly about the lack of transparency and potential impact on U.S. interests in the region. The U.S. Embassy in Nicaragua has called for greater transparency and urged the Nicaraguan government to address the concerns of local communities. The project has become a point of contention in U.S.-China relations, highlighting the growing competition between the two countries for influence in Latin America. The protests and diplomatic tensions surrounding the Nicaragua Canal project underscore the complex challenges of balancing economic development with environmental protection and social equity. The project's future remains uncertain, facing significant financial, political, and social obstacles. The protests have at times turned violent, with clashes between demonstrators and security forces. This has drawn international condemnation and raised concerns about human rights violations. Section 5. A shadow of secrecy. The U.S. Embassy in Nicaragua has raised concerns about the lack of transparency surrounding the Chinese-led canal project. The embassy has called for all project-related documents to be made public, ensuring transparency and accountability. The current lack of transparency has fueled skepticism and raised concerns about potential corruption and environmental damage. Critics argue that the Nicaraguan government has not been forthcoming about the project's details, including its environmental impact assessment and the terms of the agreement with HK&D Group. The lack of transparency makes it difficult to assess the project's true costs and benefits, further eroding public trust. The U.S. Embassy's call for transparency echoes concerns raised by local communities and international organizations. They argue that greater transparency is essential to ensure that the project is economically viable, environmentally sustainable, and socially responsible. The lack of transparency has created an environment ripe for speculation and rumors, further fueling public distrust and opposition to the project. Section 6. The Dragon's Reach. The Nicaragua Canal project is a testament to China's growing global influence and its ambitions to expand its economic and geopolitical reach. China's involvement in the project is part of its broader Belt and Road Initiative, which aims to invest in infrastructure projects around the world. The canal project has the potential to significantly enhance China's presence in Latin America, a region traditionally dominated by the United States. It would provide China with a strategic asset in the Western Hemisphere and could pave the way for increased Chinese investment and trade in the region. China's growing influence in Latin America has not gone unnoticed by the United States, which has viewed these developments with a mix of caution and concern. The Nicaragua Canal project is a prime example of the shifting geopolitical landscape and the growing competition between China and the United States for influence in key regions around the world. China's involvement in the canal project is part of its long-term strategy to secure access to vital resources and markets, expanding its global influence. Section 7. America's plea for openness. The U.S. Embassy in Managua has called for all stakeholders' voices to be heard regarding the canal project. This includes local communities, environmental groups, and civil society organizations. The embassy's call for inclusivity aims to ensure that the project does not come at the expense of local communities or the environment. The U.S. Embassy has emphasized the importance of a thorough and transparent environmental impact assessment to assess the project's potential risks and mitigate any negative consequences. It has also urged the Nicaraguan government to engage in meaningful consultations with local communities and address their concerns. The U.S. Embassy's stance reflects the growing international consensus on the importance of sustainable development and the need to balance economic growth with environmental protection and social responsibility. The U.S. Embassy has also provided financial support to local NGOs working on environmental conservation and community development in Nicaragua, demonstrating its commitment to sustainable development in the region. Section 8. A New World Order. The Nicaragua Canal project, with its massive scale and geopolitical implications, marks a new era of global competition between major powers like China and the United States. The project highlights the growing rivalry between these countries for influence, resources, and strategic advantage. The canal's construction could reshape global trade routes and supply chains, potentially shifting the balance of power in the region and beyond. It also underscores the increasing importance of infrastructure development as a tool of economic and geopolitical competition. The Nicaragua Canal project serves as a reminder of the complex and interconnected nature of global affairs in the 21st century. It highlights the challenges and opportunities presented by China's rise as a global power and the need for cooperation and dialogue to address shared global challenges. The outcome of the Nicaragua Canal project will likely have lasting consequences for the region's geopolitical landscape and could serve as a precedent for future infrastructure projects undertaken by rising global powers.